Hey, it's Dr. Russell, and today we're going to talk about the hidden effects of stress. So, maybe some of those symptoms you've been having are actually due to chronic stress. So, we're going to go through some of those different things that can happen with stress, as well as some tips and tools to kind of help figure out and reduce that stress that might be affecting what's going on in your body. So, if you remember from our previous video, hormones, specifically adrenaline and cortisol, are released when you're under stress. And cortisol is the one that we're going to talk about a lot today. But if you remember, those hormones are released in the blood and they basically can go to every system of your body. So that's why when we talk about the symptoms today, you're going to start realizing that it can impact all kinds of things going on that you might not realize are related to stress. So, one of the most common symptoms, or something that really makes a lot of sense when it comes to stress, is insomnia. So, cortisol, again, while it's released as a stress hormone, it's also part of our circadian rhythm, which is our sleep wake cycle. So, cortisol should be higher in the morning and then decrease throughout the day, being lower at night so we can go to sleep when melatonin is going to go up. So, with stress, if we're having stress throughout the day, that can impact when cortisol is peaking, and that can affect our sleep. So, some people might have that 3 a.m. wake up and you don't know why you're waking up, you're just waking up for some reason. So, that can be due to stress because your cortisol is peaking when it shouldn't be. So, it basically affects that cortisol rhythm. Another common symptom or something that can happen when we're stressed, which we talked a little bit at the last video, is that cortisol and will promote the release of insulin. And again, insulin is a fat storage hormone, so that can cause weight gain, especially in the middle. So if you find that you have a lot of extra fat around your tummy area, and that's stubborn and not going away with diet or exercise, that could be due to stress. And also sleep, not getting enough sleep can affect weight loss. So those two can kind of go together. Another thing that I think most of us can understand when it comes to stress is we might have tension, so like muscle tension. We might have tension headaches. So again, it's this kind of tensed up feeling from stress. Another thing that can happen when we're stressed from cortisol is that it can affect our memory. So maybe you're just not remembering what you were going to do that day, or what was on your to-do list, or what you're going to even say in the moment. I've had that where that word just goes out the window. So that can be from stress. Another symptom that can happen when you're commonly stressed is that your self-control kind of decreases. So perhaps you're working on nutrition or trying to exercise because of that extra weight gain, or just wanting to have a tool for stress, but your self-control isn't where it normally is. That muscle maybe isn't as strong because of stress, so it's kind of like a losing battle. Another thing that can happen when we're stressed is we can feel some strong emotions like apathy or overwhelm or sadness, which you might think you're depressed from that, but turns out that actually could just be due to stress. So you may not need that antidepressant. It's really just working on stress and tools for stress management. Another thing that can happen with stress is that we can have an increased appetite. So again, that doesn't help if you're trying to lose that extra weight. Or we could have a decreased appetite. Some people, when they're stressed out, just don't go eating. They have no appetite. So it depends on the person and kind of where you're at, but it could go either way for that. Then something else that can happen from chronic stress that might be a little bit harder to put together is actually heartburn. So when you're in that stressed out fight or flight mode, then you're not, again, in that rest and digest mode. So if you're not in that rest and digest mode, you're not making as much stomach acid. And the stomach acid in your body, in your stomach, actually tells your sphincter, so that closure between your esophagus and your stomach, to close. So it has this feedback signal saying, hey, there's stomach acid in here, let's stay closed. So if you're not making as much stomach acid, it's not signaling to that lower esophageal sphincter to stay closed, so it'll stay a little bit open. And then you can have acid washing back up and then causing heartburn. So again, you might be noticing some more heartburn after you've gone through a lot of stress and not really putting those things together, but there is a physiological reason why that could happen. Something else that can happen with stress is menstrual issues. So it can affect your libido because of other hormones. It can affect your menses being delayed or irregular. It can also affect fertility because of the impact of hormones. And then worsen some of those conditions we talked about before from estrogen dominance, like endometriosis or fibroids or things like that. Another thing with chronic stress is it can affect or exacerbate autoimmune conditions. So we talked about cortisol affecting thyroid. So Hashimoto's is the most common form of hypothyroidism. So that can affect that prevalence of the autoimmune condition happening. So it basically affects your immune system. And with that affecting your immune system, allergies. So if you have a worsening of allergies or allergies that you didn't have before, think about your stress. So cortisol can actually impact your allergies and whether that's happening. So that's, again, something you wouldn't necessarily put together, but there definitely is a reason for that possibly. So those are just, this is not an exhaustive list, but those are just some broad ideas of symptoms that could happen from stress. So some tools we're going to talk about to try to help with the symptoms that could be related to stress is, first of all, figure out what's from stress. So one thing that I do, and I spend a lot of time with my patients doing, is basically creating a timeline. So figuring out, okay, when did this stressful thing happen, this thing, I moved, I got married, I had kids, I started a new job, I got a new boss, my commute got longer, and then start listing and figuring out when did your symptoms start in that timeline. So it might not be an immediate effect, you might not have started that commute and then, a week later your symptoms started, but if it's around the time or a few months after, that might make you suspect that it is due to stress. So it tends to have a cumulative effect. It's not generally an immediate effect, but if you start kind of putting the pieces together, you might figure that out. So that's one thing you can do. Obviously, eliminating all your stress would be a really clear way to see what is stress related. Again, it may take a few months to kind of repair your body for it to reset and heal, but that could be one option for you depending on what's going on in your life. For most of us, that's not really doable. So another option is, I recommend literally just listing out everything kind of on your to-do list, everything on your mind, just dump it out into some kind of format. So that could be a digital list. I personally like handwriting things. There's something cathartic about physically writing things out. But that way, these things aren't kind of staying in your brain and they're out on a piece of paper and they're out of your brain, and your brain's not worrying that it's going to forget something if it's all in one list. And then once you have that list, something you can do is maybe go through and evaluate, okay, are these things I actually have to do? Are they important? Are these things maybe I can say no to for now? Maybe there's extra commitments or things in there that you just wanted to do but maybe don't have time for like you did. I know I've had to quit a few things over the years and, realizing that it was causing undue amount of stress and I wasn't really getting as much benefit from it as I had thought. So that could be another option, or maybe something just put on hold and come back to in a year when you have more time and are more available for that. And another trick for the to-do list stuff is if you look at all your things on your to-do list and what's the one thing on there that you're dreading doing the most. That might be something that we tend to repeat on our to-do list from week to week, just keeps putting off to the next week and so on. So if you tackle that one thing on your to-do list and get it done, that can free up a lot of, mental overwhelm just by tackling that thing. And I found a lot of times, usually it's something that doesn't take, days to do. It maybe takes a couple hours and you realize you've been anguishing over it for, weeks or months possibly. And wow, in a few hours I got it done and now it's off my to-do list and I feel so much better and lighter. So, something like taxes is usually a good example of that. If, you're putting it off just because of the pain that it is, but then once you actually get it done, how much of a relief does it feel to actually have that thing done that you have to do every year. So that's another trick that I like to use. Something else that you can use that's really simple is just journaling. If you have stress, pent up emotions, getting those out and kind of getting perspective. Sometimes it's easier to write things down so you can actually kind of step back from the moment and realize what's going on in your life with stress. Obviously, counseling is always a great option to talk to a third party that, can kind of help you work through your stress, maybe setting boundaries with certain commitments or people even. And last tool that I'm going to talk about is even just mindfulness. So, not necessarily meditation, although obviously you could do that. That would be a really great tool to have to help with stress. But the practice of mindfulness. So that could be something like taking a walk outside. So, mindfully paying attention to your surroundings, to the colors, to the sounds, not like on your phone listening to something or, texting people, but just really being in the moment. Another thing you could do mindfully is just breathing. So paying attention to how it feels in your body to take an inhalation and breathe in, and how it feels to release it and breathe out. So very simple techniques that can help kind of, again, bring you in the moment and kind of give you little moments of de-stressing. So hopefully that was helpful. Again, stress can affect all kinds of systems in the body, can be related to all kinds of symptoms. You might have symptoms that we don't even understand why they're related to stress, but you might realize once this started, then this symptom started, and once this stress resolved, this symptom went away. So hopefully that's helpful to kind of think outside the box on what might be related to stress. And then also, try some of these different tools and see what works for you, whether it's writing everything down or, getting counseling or talking to a friend, or just doing that one thing on your to-do list that you've been putting off for a really long time. So hopefully, again, that was helpful, and I will talk to you all soon.